Good afternoon. It's Monday, and it's time for the North Carolina Vinyl Picker Show. We got a two-parter today. At the end, I'm going to show you the 10 records that are the beginnings of jazz fusion. But first, we're going to go through the stuff that I picked up this week. And the first thing I picked up this week, we went down to Hickory, North Carolina, went to Barnes & Noble, and I got myself a copy of Blue Train on Blue Note 1577. That's right. This is the complete masters right here of John Coltrane. And this is a tone poet, as you can see. The only copy they had left there, and it sounds magnificent. So if you like John Coltrane and you like the album Blue Note, which is probably one of his best albums, then that was the one you want to get right there. It has some beautiful pictures inside of John, and I'll show you those real quick. Yeah, third time is a charm when it comes to mid-century jazz for me, it seems. I've been listening this week to a lot of Miles, listening to Coltrane. What else have I been listening to? Lou Donaldson, and I'm really trying. The third time's a charm, like I say. So we're going to get this done. We're going to get this done, and I'm going to keep on listening to all this great mid-century jazz that's out there. So I got that this week, and I also picked up another gem this week while I was there. I found this album, which I think this was the original cover, but this is the redo. Jack Johnson, Miles Davis tribute to Jack Johnson. This album here, I will show again here in a few minutes and explain a little bit more about this album. It's the precursor to another album. Jack Johnson, Miles Davis, the one and only Miles. Those are the two things that I got this week from down there in Hickory, North Carolina. Got a couple of 45s in the mail. Steve Hackett, a doll that's made in Japan, and Tony Banks and Fish and Tony Banks wearing each other's t-shirts. And of course, Fish is the original lead singer from Marillion, and Tony Banks is and was the keyboard player for Genesis. This is one of Tony's solo albums he did with Fish. It's called Soundtracks, and I believe this was from the movie Quicksilver. Shortcut to Somewhere. So those are some great 45s. I used to have them both in the day. I'm just trying to get back a few of my 45s that I lost along the way. And I got a few things in the mail this week. Now this guy here, Herman Swosbell, was only 17 years old when he did this record. And I heard it on YouTube this week. Someone did a deep dive into him and talked about him, and then how they found him later on in his life. He was living in a cave, and it's a whole big story. So if you're interested, there's the name right there, Herman Swosbell. And this album was on Arista, came out in 1976, and Roberta Flack actually had something to do with this album. She had heard him and talked to Bill Graham, and it just so happened Bill Graham was his uncle. Yeah, the Bill Graham that ran the Fillmore East and San Francisco East. Bill Graham. Well, this was his nephew, and this was a one and done. He made one album, and it's jazz fusion, and it's unbelievable that this young man who played the acoustic piano, David Samuels is on here, another guy named Bob Goldman, and then there's somebody here on saxophone. I found this copy here, and it's sealed. It's been sealed since 1976. So let's get this puppy open. What are we gonna do? Let's get this thing opened up. Let's do the Rob here. Let's get this thing opened up. Okay. this thing open. Smells like 1976, let me tell you. Oh, we got the Arista. Look at that. Oh my goodness, does that look beautiful. Never been played. Yep, Herman Swosbell. So if you get a chance, check him out. I think I'm saying his name right. Sounds like it's maybe Czech or something. And yeah, so I got a sealed copy in the shrink, of course, and it's Herman all day long. It's Fusion. See, the funny thing is, Happy the Man was on Arista too. I was talking to my friend John, and yeah, wonderful stuff. Couple more things here. I found this one on eBay, and I bid on it, and I got it. It's a Taiwanese pressing of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. The first album. Look at that. Huh? Is that pretty cool or what? I love these covers in these different countries. They're really cool. And they're cool to have. Let me put this over here. Also got this in the mail. Got it in the mail today. Tomita. Anybody know Tomita? He's a keyboardist, and he's from Japan as well. He did Moog synthesizer. He made several albums back in the 70s. This one here is from 76. So if you get a chance, try to listen to some Tomita. You can pick his records up fairly cheap. $5. I think I've got just about all of them now. I think I'm only missing I think I'm just missing 2. I think there's just 2 records that I'm missing. So that was all that I picked up this week. It wasn't a heck of a lot, but I'm trying to look around, see if there's anything else up here on my wall, but there isn't. Now, let's talk about for a second how these records came out and how progressive jazz and fusion jazz and all that started back in July 22nd, 1968. Miles got this thing kicked off. Miles, if you listen to Kind of Blue, which came out before that, he was getting out of the post-bop and getting into fusion. But the first thing that Miles did was Miles in the Sky. And Miles in the Sky, I don't have. It's a double album. But you'll see John McLaughlin through all this. Is it John McLaughlin and Miles and Tony Williams? They are the men that got this thing kicked off. And then they got this whole thing running along with Billy Cobham and a few other people. So Miles in the Sky came out in 68. July, the summer of 68. In December of that year, in 68, we had this album. We had this album right here, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Now, I'm sure everybody in the world just about has heard these on FM radio. They've heard Spinning Wheel, and they've heard And When I Die, and lots of other stuff that they did. This was actually, I think, Blood, Sweat, and Tears' second album, if I'm not mistaken. The first album had Al Cooper in the band, and he left the band. And then David Clayton Thomas, who was an awesome singer, he came in, and they made this album. This is a fusion album. This is the second on my list, December of 68. And then comes January, right on the heels of that. The next month, January the 27th, this album comes out. Chicago Transit Authority. Yes, this is jazz fusion. Fusion between jazz and rock. And these guys started off, this is just an incredible album. If you haven't heard this album, you need to get out there, and you can get this album for less than $5. This is a demonstration. This is a promo too. This is just these guys started off as Chicago Transit Authority. I remember listening to this album in my bedroom. My brother had a turntable, and this is one of the albums that he had. And it's just awesome. As well as their second and third album. And then they start to get more FM play, and they got away from, and then Terry Kath committed suicide, and so a lot of things happened during that time frame. But they started off as Chicago Transit Authority, and I guess they got sued by the city of Chicago, and they had to change it to just Chicago, from what I was told. So then we're going to the summer of 69, And then we're going to talk about Miles again. See, he keeps coming back. Miles, John McLaughlin, Tony Williams. You see a pattern here, and in a silent way. And I don't have a copy of that currently, but I got it coming in the mail. I found a copy. It's actually, I ordered it today, and it's an analog production copy, so it's going to be really nice when I get it. And that's an awesome album. And then March of '69 comes around. There's a new player in the group. Now we're talking '69. We're talking '68 to '71. So this album comes out in March of '69, in the early spring of '69. You got Spaces. And this is with Larry Coryell. Again, you got John McLaughlin. See, he's on all these records. He's on all of this stuff. Chick Corea, Billy Cobham. Now Billy Cobham's involved. Now Billy's starting to come out. And there's other records here, honorable mentions, that I'll mention at the end. But this one here is Spaces. This album is Larry Coryell with John McLaughlin and Chick Corea. And this is the first time I'm seeing Chick Corea. So then we go into September of '69. And you got Mr. Tony Williams. Now he's branching out and recording his own stuff. And this album here is called Lifetime Emergency. I got it on CD. And on this album, you got John McLaughlin. You got the players. You got the same players. So who's all on this one? Let's see if I can find here. John McLaughlin. He plays guitar, and Larry Young is on organ. So there you go. This album here, I don't think I've ever seen this album on vinyl. I'm sure it's not available. If it was made back in those times, it must have been available. So that was the summer of '69, when Peace and Love, everything is summer. It's the summer of love, right? Or was that '68? I'm not sure. I was just a wee lad. Okay, so then, oh gosh, where does this one go? I forgot to put this one in. This one here is Dreams. Okay, this album came out in 1970. And this album here has Michael Brecker and Randy Brecker, the Brecker brothers, who ended up going to Steps Ahead and stuff like that. And Billy Cobham is on this album. Some of the same players. So you're seeing John Abercrombie is on this album. So this album is called Dreams. And they made a second album. I don't have their second album, but I'm going to get it. So I didn't put this one on my list. See, this is live, so you know what's going to happen. And then Miles comes roaring back in 1970, in March of 1970, with Bitches Brew. This is an album, one I got from Harry, and I've been listening to this. This one here is a tough read, let me tell you, trying to get into this album. It's taken me a few times. It took Mazzy a few times, he said, to get into this album. So this came out in March of '70. So then February 24th of 1971, and you got, if I can find it, you got this album. So we came full circle. Where's this shrink? Get this stuff off of here. Get that shrink off of there. There's Miles. Whoa, Miles. Now, this album, Jack Johnson, came out on February the 24th of '71. And guess who's on this one? Well, of course, you got John McLaughlin. And you got Billy Cobham. And you got Herbie Hancock. Now, Herbie Hancock's making his presence known here. And this was February 24th of '71. Not even 6 months later. Did I say 6 months? Not even 6 months later, we have this album, Mahavishnu. And this is where it really goes. Birds of Fire's after this. Billy Cobham Spectrum's after this. Everything comes in after this. 73, 74, 75, and then Fusion was dead. You know, when Brand X came out with Unorthodox Behavior, that was like one of the last Fusion albums. Okay, here you go. The Intermounting Flame. Now this album came out, like I said, less than 6 months after this album. And it's got a lot of the same people on it. So this was the first Mahavishnu album. And this is Miles attacking that jazz fusion, coming in hot. This album here is a smoker. So if you never heard this album, it's quite the album, let me tell you. So that's it. So what do you think? I got some honorable mentions though. Gary Burton, who was on EMI Records. Was he on EMI? I think he was on EMI. Same one that Pat Metheny's on. The album came out 67 called Duster. Now that's an early fusion album, as well as Hot Rats by Frank Zappa. 69. I don't have that record either. These are all honorable mentions. Nucleus, Electric Rock, that came out in 70. I have a couple of the later Nucleus albums. Another Tony Williams album called Turn It Over. This one I do have. And this album came out in 1970. And this album has Johnny McLaughlin. Imagine that. Johnny. Johnny McLaughlin. Okay. And then Miles also had another fusion album in 71 called On the Corner. So then there's a whole bunch of fusion, like I said, after that. So if you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell. That way you'll know next time the North Carolina Vinyl Picker has a show. And I'm going to be selling a bunch of my CDs. So look in my store. It's in Discogs. Big Chief Vinyl 57. There'll be a link down below. Just click that link. It'll take you right over to Discogs. Then you can buy a whole armful of Big Chief's records. There you go. So if you're interested in CDs, I'm going to have a bunch of CDs in there. I'm going to be putting in so many each day. I got a couple hundred I'm going to put in there. And then I got lots of vinyl for you in there. And I got some VHS tapes. I got a couple 8-tracks in there for you people like 45s. There's some 45s in there. There's some VHS tapes. Oh, I said that. There's some DVDs in there. There's some Blu-rays in there. And I got a whole bunch of movies, too, that I need to move, but I can't put them on Discogs. So if anybody's looking to get some movies, let me know on DVD. So y'all take care out there, and we'll be talking to you soon. I got this under 20 minutes, so you ought to be proud of me. Support them troops out there, and I'll be talking to you soon. Big Chief out.